Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Marmalade webinar for Windows Phone 8 for our Windows Phone 8 developer offer. My name is Nick Smith. I'm an engineer at Marmalade, and for the next hour or so, I'm basically going to go through some of the information on the offer just to reiterate how it works and what the deadlines are and what the incentives are, and then go into a bit of detail about tips and information for using the Marmalade SDK for Windows Phone 8. While this is going on, feel free to post any questions to the chat window. I'll stop occasionally and have a look and see if there's anything interesting to flag up, but at the end I'll also go through any of those and answer all of the questions out loud. I'm going to do a little bit of presentation just to go through the basic information about the offer and Windows Phone 8 support within the SDK. And then we're going to do a little bit of live demoing of Marmalade Quick, which is the Lua-based 2D engine on top of Marmalade. Basically for anybody who is sort of still getting started and wants some ideas and information on how to get going quickly building some games with Marmalade, then Quick is definitely your best way to go. So we'll start with just a little overview of the incentives for building for Windows Phone 8 and how the developer offer works. Probably a lot of you will already be signed up, but this is just going to sort of reiterate these and cover the deadlines so you know exactly when they are. Sorry, I'm just rearranging my desktop slightly. Let me just pop this out of the way. So what are we offering? Basically, if you sign up to the Marmalade for Windows Phone 8 program, you'll straight away receive a free 3-month license for using Marmalade. This is a bit different to a regular license in that it's locked to just allow you to deploy to Windows Phone 8. Then basically, if you submit a beta app using that license and Marmalade to the Windows Store, then as long as they accept your beta app, then you'll receive a free Windows Phone 8 device to continue your testing on. And then if you finish your app and publish the live version to the Windows Store, then we will send you a further 3 months license. But this license will be a regular Marmalade Indie license that's unlocked and lets you deploy to all of the different platforms that we support, so iPhone, Android, and so on. We'll also now send you 1,000 XP points for Nokia's DVL Up reward scheme. So just to show you very quickly what that looks like. On their websites. Basically, you can trade in reward points for different prizes, and those range from purely fun things through to useful developer stuff for phone development. In a little bit of detail, basically all you need to do is go to the website to the offers/WP8 page. It's got pretty clear sign-up information there, but basically you need to sign into the offer via the big orange button. It'll ask you for your Marmalade login details, and if you're not a Marmalade user already, then you can just fill in details there and register on the spot. Once you've registered, you'll be assigned the license. Basically how our license system works is you're given an activation key which you can access on the website, and then you just have to put that into the tool. So go and download the regular latest version of Marmalade, which is version 7 point something at the moment. And once you have installed Marmalade, there is a big central management tool called the Hub. The first time you fire the Hub up, it'll ask you whether you want to continue with a 30-day trial or activate a license. So you'll get an email from Marmalade which will contain a link to get your Windows Phone 8 activation key, copy that key, and then in the hub just enter the key and enter your Marmalade developer details from when you signed up, and that's it. You'll straight away be set up with a 3-month license for developing for Windows Phone 8. In order to qualify for your free device in a bit more detail, you need to submit a beta version of your app to the Windows Phone Store. Once again, all the information of this is on the offers/WP8 page on the website. But basically, you need to go and sign up for the store, which is a separate process, which there's a link to, and then set up a store item as a beta app, as described here, and then submit your draft app. The app has to be built with Marmalade, and the Windows Store guys will be able to check that it's actually a Marmalade app. And there are some very minimal requirements to make sure that it passes certification. So the main one is back button has to be functional, and the first level of the game or app has to be functional. So it can't just be a pure empty shell. It needs to be a reasonable demo build of an app. Once you've done that, so long as there are devices still available on the program, you'll be sent a free device, and you need to complete the program by submitting the final build of your app in order to be entitled to keep hold of that device. And then also you need to tell us about your submission. So once again, same page, offer/WP8, there's a form to fill in to tell us when you've submitted your app, and we'll check that and sign it off against your account. To qualify for a free indie license, for some reason it's missing from this slide, but basically there is a hard deadline for this offer that the Finish app has to be submitted by the 31st of December this year, so the end of the year basically, and Microsoft do have some requirements for the app, which I will fill in later, which are basically that it needs to be a decent sort of original idea, something that would get 3 stars or above in the store. So it can't just be a simple calculator or some kind of example app. It needs to actually be something that people would find useful. But beyond that, there are no requirements for the type of app or what it does or anything like that. And once you've submitted to the store and it's been accepted, you can then keep your Windows Phone 8 device, and we'll send you a 3-month extension on top of your other 3 months, so for a total of 6 months. And that license will let you deploy to iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, and so on. So some sort of basic information about setting up for Windows Phone 8 if you haven't set up already. You'll need Windows 8 to build any apps for Windows Phone 8. This is basically because of some dependencies on the Windows Phone toolchain itself, which only supports Windows 8. So for many platforms on a Marmalade, you can use a Mac to build and deploy as well. But for Windows Phone, you need to use Windows 8 as your desktop environment. For Marmalade C++, you need a version of Visual Studio 2012 that supports Windows Phone 8. So either the professional version of Visual Studio that supports pretty much everything Microsoft related, or you can download the Windows Phone 8 SDK, which comes with an express version of Visual Studio specifically for targeting Windows Phone 8. And that Windows Phone 8 SDK and Express VS version are both free, and you can download them from the link there. The professional version does have a few nice extra debugging features and so on, but you can do everything you need to do to build an app, a C++ app with Marmalade using the Express version. For Marmalade Quick, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, that's our Lua front end to Marmalade. You don't need Visual Studio or any additional tools. So that's basically because the way Quick is built, it has all the C++ pre-built, so it doesn't need any compiler toolchain. So you should just be able to download Marmalade, put in your Windows Phone 8 license, go to Marmalade Quick, and make Windows Phone 8 deployments without any additional setup at all. So I'm going to talk about Quick for a little bit. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what Quick is and why we built it and how you can use it, and then we'll fire up the Marmalade Hub from Marmalade 7 and do a little bit of app development just to show you how Quick works, a little bit of physics and touch and so on. So to give a little bit of background on Marmalade Quick and why we built it, up until about a year ago, Marmalade was purely a C++ platform. How Marmalade works basically is it has a pure C platform abstraction layer, so you can use one API for accelerometer, compass, file, and so on. Code once, use C++ standards, build a single binary, and then just pick your platforms, hit deploy, and get builds for those platforms. And the great thing with it is you get sort of standard C++ type APIs and also debugging tools and IDEs, and you don't need to use any of the platform tools. You don't need to touch platform code. You just have to worry about making your game or app, and that's it. And that's basically what Marmalade was. Comes with lots and lots of middleware, engines, extensions, plugins for third-party stuff, and also our hub tool, which is basically a sort of nice project management system that deals with tool chains and deployments and configurations and so on. What we were finding, though, is we had a lot of developers doing development in 2D, and they wanted to build, fun, simple games, or just to be able to rapidly build stuff, basically, without having to. Maybe not. They didn't want to use C++, or they just wanted to build things quickly. And we didn't have any out-of-the-box RAD tools for that, basically. So we looked into what was available. There's lots of other tools out there on the market, but they seem to sort of all be lacking in some way. So maybe they're closed source. You can't actually get down to the code to edit and extend them. Maybe they only deploy to a couple of platforms. Maybe they're very high level, so some nice editors, but no real coding support. And we're we're coders. We make tools for coders. So we looked at what we had and thought, well, we can easily extend Marmalade to support some 2D middleware with some higher level languages. And so what we did was we built Marmalade Quick. So Quick is basically just some middleware that sits on top of Marmalade. It uses Cocos 2DX, a C++ Cocos 2D front end for all of its graphics rendering. It uses Lua as the main language. So Lua is a high-level, sort of particularly fast scripting language with its own runtime, and then it uses SQLite for file management and Box2D for physics. But it also gives you access to lots and lots of the Marmalade C++ APIs straight from Lua front end. The reason we picked Lua is it's very fast. I'll talk a little bit about Lua code and we look at some examples, but it basically only really has a few types. It has sort of numbers and strings and tables. So it's very, very simple. Anyone can pick it up, but you can extend it to do quite powerful and interesting stuff with it. You don't need to know or use C++ for Quick, but I'll talk a little bit later about how with Marmalade Quick, you can extend it to support additional bits of C++. So if there are interesting C++ APIs that Marmalade supports or that you have code for you want to use, but Quick doesn't have a Lua front end for, then you can basically just extend Quick very easily to provide Lua versions of those. Because it's a high-level scripting language, you can obviously do more with less code. It uses popular frameworks like Cocos 2D. So the nice thing with that is the texture types it supports are all the same as Cocos 2D, and we support things like the tiled map editor that's quite popular with Cocos 2D. You can use that for tiles in Quick. It's got a full ID for debugging, Zero Brain, which we'll have a quick look at. And then it's built on top of Marmalade, so it's got pretty wide-ranging platform support. It's very solid. It deals with lots of things like issues between different devices on the same platforms, and it uses the same project format and the same hub to manage everything. How Quick works basically is it just has bindings from Lua APIs to C++ implementations, and as I said, there is a precompiled Marmalade C++ app using Cocos 2D. So this is why you don't need the Windows Phone 8 toolchain, for example, to use Quick, because all the C++ stuff that would require any compilers is all precompiled, and it's precompiled and sort of optimized for all the different devices and architectures we support. So all you really have to do is worry about your Lua code running on top. And Lua itself is running via a C++ library built with Marmalade. But as I said, if you want to dive below that and hack it apart a bit and do things with both the C++ and the Lua side, there is absolutely nothing stopping you. And a nice thing with how that works is basically it uses our regular Marmalade desktop simulator, which we use for C++ apps, but it loads up your Lua scripts at runtime and executes them. So you can basically have them open in an IDE, edit and play with them, and reload live while it's running. Basically just hit Control-R while your app is up and running, change your code, and reload it. So to give a very simple example of, well, I say an app, an app using Quick. This is basically some code to display a label and to create a button which you can press and touch, and the button will change color. It looks a bit like that running in the simulator. As you can see, we have a thing called the director. The director is basically a big singleton main library object that controls all of the visual parts of the app. So it has a lot of create functions like create label, create sprite, create node, create rectangle, and these just build visual objects that live within your scene. Quick is based on a scene graph type engine, so there you add nodes and then you add children to the nodes and they move relative to each other. And then it also has a physics engine built in using Box2D. And basically all of the things you can easily build with Quick are built around the scene graph and the physics engine idea. It has global and local events. So here we've created a thing called a button, which is a sprite. Then I've given the button an event listener. So this is basically how events are handled in Quick. There are a set of standard name events. So touch is when an object gets touched, and button is the name of a function. In this case, I could have just called the function something like touch the button, but instead of passing a function here, I'm passing in the button object itself, and it just looks inside the button object for a function called touch. So this gives you a nice, simple, and quite powerful way of just creating objects, adding events to objects by giving them functions like this, and then registering them by calling add event listener. And you'll see how this works in a little example app in a moment. The documentation for Quick is all online up on our new Confluence docs, along with the C++ APIs, and it has a full listing for all of the different libraries like Director. Something a little more complex, just showing you physics with a couple of lines of code. So I've got another touch event here at the top. The phases are just parts of the touch, so began happens when a touch event starts, and there's an end one when you lift your finger off. And this just basically says when any touch event happens at the start, then get the director to create a sprite at the position where you touch, and to use this object here, which is, this image, ball.png. And then to add physics, all we do is literally just call physics, which is another global object like the director, add node, the sprite we just created, and that would be it. By putting radius equals 40 here, basically I'm just giving this ball object a radius, and at that point the physics engine knows that it's a circular thing rather than a square, and straight away any other objects in the scene that use physics will be able to interact with it as if it was a ball hitting them. Then I've also added another event listener here called collision, using this body collision function. So this is a simpler function, just a plain function, no tables or anything fancy going on. And basically this just says whenever a collision happens with this object to call this function. So my ball hitting anything is going to call this function, and in this function there is an event that happens. It's the start event again, began, and this time it'll create a sprite at the position of the collision, and it uses this cross.png object. So basically that's, imagine like an explosion or a splat effect where the ball is hitting something. And then another useful thing that Quick does is there is a simple animation system called tweening. So tweening is basically start with some position or some state and go from that to another state. So in this case we're using scale. We have our little splat sprite that was created, and we say after 0.25 seconds scale down to nothing. So that'll basically make the image shrink down straight after it's created. You can also tween lots of other things like position, rotation, color channels, so you can tween the red, green, and blue separately, and so on. So it gives you a very simple way of creating animations with usually 1 or 2 lines of code. The other interesting thing to see in here is there is a target object here in this collision function, and this is basically just going to be a reference to the object that the function was called for. So if I wanted to do something to the ball itself within this function, I can use target to access the ball. And on the right there, you can see it's kind of an example of what this might look like in practice, with a load of different sprite objects being created and just falling and bouncing off each other with a little explosion mark. So before looking at extending Quick a little bit more, I'm going to fire up the hub tool and have a little play around and show you that. And any questions about anything or anything you want to see, then feel free to fire away. So this is the Marmalade Hub, which is the kind of central project management tool in Marmalade. You've got C++ and Quick here. I'm just going to while we're here, have a quick look at the dependency checker. So this is a useful new feature in Marmalade 7 to make sure you've basically got any external tools and certificates and things like that set up that you might need. So click on that. The main thing is, if you're doing C++ development, the IDE and compiler setup. So just to show you here, I've got the free Express versions of Visual Studio set up for C++ development. And as I said, for Windows Phone 8, you want a Windows Phone friendly IDE. So I've got Express 2012 for Windows Phone selected. You can also set up everything else you might need here, but that's basically the only things you need for Windows Phone 8. Pop back home again. We'll have a quick look at C++ later as well, but if I have a look at Marmalade Quick, and yeah, just to show you on the right here, I've got my Microsoft license set up. So once you've got your activation key and put it in, it should say Microsoft license there. If it doesn't, then you've got the wrong kind of license type selected, and you won't be able to make builds for Windows Phone 8, so that's worth checking. If I go to Marmalade Quick, so this is the project management view. To create a new project, very simple, create new project, give it a name, so I'm just going to call it WP8 Quick Demo. It gets put into your local folder by default, but you can put that anywhere. And when you hit create here, it creates the whole C++ app and general framework needed for a Quick app straight away. So I can actually leave it set to the simulator here on the left here and hit run. And there's basically an app already built that gets launched in the Marmalade simulator. The app won't do very much apart from probably print something like a hello world type message here in the output. But we can very easily edit this and start adding more Lua code to make it do things. There are debug and build options here you can switch between. So basically this is all the C++ stuff again, but if you switch to release, it's just going to run a bit faster because it's going to be using the release version of the C++ code. Typically for Quick, you won't really need to use the debug version unless you find that your app is running slowly or something interesting is happening and you want to take a look at what's going on under the hood. But most of your code will be Lua code, so you'll be more interested in what the Lua environment is spitting out. And then just to show you, when we want to deploy to Windows Phone 8, we just pick it as a deployment option here. But we'll start by actually building something. So if I go to Open Project Directory here, it'll show you the actual project. And how Quick works is, by default, it basically just looks for Lua files in your resources folder. So this stuff around here is basically all the pre-built C++ and various setup stuff you might want to use. That's the project file. In the resources folder, you get some ICF files for configuring things and a default Lua file that is like your app entry point. So if I have a quick look at, so this, for example, is an ICF file for configuring the simulator if I wanted to do that. And this is basic app configuration. And this is actually, Quick Lua is actually the entire of the source version of the Quick Lua engine. So if you wanted to, you can dive straight in and hack away at the Lua code that's actually making the entire thing run. It gets packaged up and included in your build. You can, through the configuration files, set for all of that Lua stuff to get built to a binary before deployment, so it runs a bit faster. And information on how to do that is up on the Quick docs on the web. So I'm going to open main.lua up. And actually, I've got Lua is set up to open with Zero Brain by default. So Zero Brain is a Lua IDE that we ship with the Marmalade SDK. Looks like a regular IDE. You can pick, you can set this up to match different projects and edit stuff. I've been playing around with some other projects, I think, here, so I'm just going to set it back to my demo app, which I think is in here. In fact, I'll leave that for now. But basically, use it like a regular IDE. If you want to, you can debug and run from the IDE as usual. You can set it up to support different Lua interpreters, but we've got it set to Marmalade Quick at the moment. I'm going to build and deploy straight from the Marmalade Hub, I think, in this case. But it's a full IDE. You can debug and do what you want with it. I'm going to cheat a little bit here, and I've got some pre-prepared code. So if I just nip down to the desktop, so I've got some images that I'm going to use for this, and I've taken these straight from the Marmalade SDK. So inside the quick folder in the Marmalade SDK, there's a whole load of example data items. Take those and I think I close this down. Just drop them in. So anything inside the resources folder, that's kind of the root folder for your app. So if I put those in there, they're nice and easy to get to. And then in the main.lua file, I've cheated and pre-written these things here, but just because I'm terrible at typing live. If I pop back to Zero Brain and paste this in. So what we're doing here is basically using the director to create some sprites. So I've got a background, which is this epic sky image, and a sprite that's going to sit at the bottom, which is walkway long. That's all you have to do to put an image in. I've not got any paths at the start because by default Quick will just look inside its resources folder, and those are all in the root folder there. If I hit run and restart this now, I think I hit save. Yeah. So and it's loaded up the background image and the image at the bottom there. The PNGs have got transparencies in them, and those are just picked up and used by Quick. Quick supports typical things like PNGs and JPEGs and so on. Now, as I was saying, I can just edit the Lua code and reload live. So I'm just going to drop in a bit more code. This is some event code, pretty similar to the stuff that was in the slides earlier. What this is doing is I've created a table called events. So Lua works with tables as basically the objects that you have. And then by declaring this function, system events touch, this is a function called touch inside my table called system events. And what this touch function is going to do is when the touch event starts, so when you put your finger down or you click your mouse, it creates a sprite object with a director at the point where you click, and it uses this beach ball image that we put in the folder earlier. I've given it a name, ball. That's useful because you can basically retrieve the name later and use it to identify the object in some way. And then there's an anchor setting here that I've put to 0.5. So this basically means whenever I'm positioning the, basically what it means is rather than drawing the ball so that the point here where it's created is the bottom left of the ball, which is the default positioning of everything, it'll be the center. So basically it'll just be centered on the point I'm clicking. The anchor is useful just for visually moving things around based on where the origin is. And then finally, I've got an event lister. So system is a global set of events. And what this means is that basically it's not tying it to an object. So it's not saying when I do something to a specific sprite or when I do something to a specific part of the scene. It's just saying whenever a generic event happens, then do something. So this is generic event is called touch. So this is when ever any touch happens. So anyone touches the screen at all. And the event it's going to call is the touch event from system events. So it's just going to call through to this. So if I just save that, switch back here, press Control R. It's basically reloaded the Lua code, and now I've got a setup where I can click anywhere to create beach balls. And then the final bit I'm going to do is just add some physics. So first of all, we'll add some physics to the balls. So every time I create a ball, it creates a new object. And as I said, there's a global thing called physics, which is managing physics in the game. Physics is turned off by default, but as soon as you do something with it, it'll turn itself on. You add any node to physics by just calling add node. So I'm going to add the ball, and by giving it a radius of 40, the physics thing knows that it's a ball object. And one nice thing you can see here with the zero brain ID is it's pulling up the descriptions of the functions like physics.addNode from the header files themselves of Quick. So you've got a nice bit of auto-completion and instant information from the IDE. And then the final thing I've done here is I'm adding this ground node to physics as well and calling it type static. So that just basically means it won't move. The other things can bounce off of it. So if I hit start and restart this. So another thing I'll point out is there are a couple of different ways you can restart an app. You can press Control-R to reload the Lua, or you can press Control-T, which will reload the entire C++ app. And the reason for doing Control-T, I've got low memory on my machine there for some reason. The reason for doing Control-T would basically be if you've done a whole load of stuff with lots of different images and you're running out of memory or something, you just want to start with a clean slate, then that's why you would do that. And as you can see, got some 10 lines of code, we've got some instant physics simulation. The reason it's running a bit slowly here is basically because I have got the Lua debugging turned on. So if you look on the right here, you'll see there's quite a bit of output from stuff that's going on. In fact, the interesting thing is you can't see the output because I've put release loader here, but it's still doing all of the tracing. So if I close this down and switch back to debug and run, you'll see basically if it starts doing things like garbage collecting objects, it'll start logging that it's removing an object from the scene and so on. So that's a quick app, very, very quickly. And then to do a Windows Phone 8 deployment is incredibly simple with Quick. Basically, just from the platform options, select Windows Phone 8. The C++ stuff is already built, so there's no need to actually build anything. You just hit package, and it'll package it up into a ZAP file. And you notice here I haven't put a publisher ID in, so when you sign up for the Windows Phone 8 store, you'll be given a publisher ID, which you want to set, but by default it'll just create a dummy one. That's enough to get the build running on your device for testing. And if I click on the briefcase item over here, it'll open up the last build that was made. So here's a ZAP file, which I can push to device, and if I plug in a Windows Phone 8 device, I can literally just pick package install run, hit go, and test the build. To elaborate a bit on that publisher ID part, once you pick your platform, there's configuration options, so I can go to edit current, and this is where you set basically all the configuration options for your build. So Marmalade is designed so that by default, you don't have to set anything, it'll always just build and push to a device. But before you actually put something on a store, you want to polish it up a little bit with these. So under project, you can do things like set the names that are going to be displayed in the app on the device. You can change icons and splash screens. And under basic and advanced, so basically the Windows Phone 8 specific stuff. So the manifest bit here is useful. If you want to support different kinds of Windows Phone 8 devices or not, you can set them here. So an example would be don't support the devices with higher or lower screen resolutions or higher or lower memory limits. If you know your app is going to require a really high power device to run, or you just only want to support specifically large screen sizes or so on, then you can pick these options here to select that. And then the publisher ID and author information here is the stuff that you would get from your Microsoft account once you sign up, and you'll need to fill that in before you submit your beta and final builds to the store. So that's basically all of that I'm going to show for Quick today. If I go back to the home page and hop to a Marmalade C++ app, so this is Harvest Hijinks, which is an example app that ships with the SDK, which is quite useful if you're building C++ stuff in 2D in this case, because it's got a lot of open source example code for you to play around with. If I open the project up, you'll see that for Windows Phone 8, it's very similar to the Quick setup, except that when I pick Windows Phone 8, I'll actually have to make a build this time, so it's red here because I haven't built it yet. You'll notice, for example, if I was to pick another platform like Android, there's a build button here, but for Windows Phone 8 there isn't. And the reason is because I've got the Visual Studio Express version of 2012 installed. That doesn't let you do builds from any external tools or command line. So the only way to build for Windows Phone in C++ there is to open it up in the IDE. So basically I can hit open in IDE here and it'll launch Visual Studio 2012. And you can set the solution here to device build for both x86 and ARM now. So a useful thing that I'll mention in a moment is that we've got a beta build of the SDK out that lets you do debugging in the Visual Studio simulator for Windows Phone 8. So that's basically a simulator that Microsoft provide with their Windows Phone 8 SDK, and you can now set the configuration here to simulator rather than to device and build and run there. And also with Visual Studio 2012 for Windows Phone 8, you can do on-device debugging straight from the IDE on the device, which I won't show off now, but it's very simple. Basically, plug your device in, put some breakpoints in, and go. And it's just like debugging on the desktop. And the same for packaging and install as with Quick. Basically, you've got configuration options, exactly the same options which you want to set to your publisher ID, and then you can package and install for device builds, or just hit package for a ZAP file to send up to Microsoft. So just get back to where we were. I think I was going to talk through a couple of quick little extra bits about Quick that might be of use, might be of interest. The main one is actually extending Quick. So as I was saying, Quick is all built on open source code, and it's basically Lua wrappers for C++ stuff and an engine. So if you want to extend the Lua stuff, there is some functionality called to Lua, and it's basically a script that you can run over a C++ code base, and it'll give you a framework that will allow you to create Lua wrappers for those C++ APIs. And the C++ world, Marmalade actually supports a load of extensions and middleware, especially third-party things for things like analytics and debugging and billing for different stores, advertising, that kind of stuff. So you might find there are things that are available in the C++ world that Quick out of the box doesn't support, and you can basically use Lua to create wrappers for these things. And we really encourage developers to have a go at that and to make those available to other users. So there's a website on GitHub for Marmalade where we have a few hundred third-party plugins and extensions built for Marmalade, and if you want to use Lua to build something interesting for Quick based on some C++ tech and upload it to GitHub, then please feel free to do so. Let us know and we'll try and promote your tech to other users. And the other interesting thing that I sort of touched on earlier as well is because we're using Cocos 2D and Lua, anything out there that supports those things can basically be reused to some extent with Quick. So things like sprite editors for Cocos 2D, and resource files and fonts and so on are all usable in Marmalade Quick. And this little diagram just gives you a bit of an idea of if you're taking in extra bits of C++ middleware and extensions in the C++ world and using Lua to wrap them, then you can really extend Quick out to do anything you want. So just to finish off, while we've got a little bit of time, I'm just going to run through some handy info for Windows Phone 8 related to the SDK that you probably should know. Some of this will already be covered. So I was saying about the dependency checker in Visual Studio 2012. The main difference between Express and Pro is basically that, as I said, there's no build button, but you also get some extra sort of general usability features with Pro. But basically, anything you want to do with Marmalade can be done with the Express version. For C++, there's some useful stuff you should know about shaders. If you go to the Windows Phone 8 platform guide in the docs, which is right up at the top level, very easy to find. It'll give you some very detailed information on what you need to do using shaders in your app. Basically, because we support OpenGLES by running it on top of DirectX in a slightly unusual way, the great thing about this is it lets you use regular OpenGLES code in a Windows Phone app, and Windows Phone doesn't support OpenGLES out of the box, but it means you have to do a few extra steps to precompile shaders. If you're using IWGX or other Marmalade rendering middleware, that'll all work out of the box, and it has simple configuration options to do that stuff for you. As I said, we've started supporting the Windows Phone 8 simulator, so there's now, as of today, a new build available. This is a beta build, so beware that you probably shouldn't build your final store submissions with it, but certainly go ahead and try it out, and basically it'll just let you use Visual Studio to build Marmalade apps and run them in Microsoft's emulator simulator that they ship with their SDK. The useful thing about that compared to just using Marmalade's regular cross-platform desktop simulator is that it'll give you some extra device-type features, so just simulating things that the device can do that are Microsoft specific. And then in the C++ world, we've got 3 quite new APIs that have gone in. There's an advertising API, so this is sort of Microsoft's own ad network, a billing API for making in-app purchases through the Windows Phone Store, and a sharing API, which basically lets the app connect to other apps in some way. And useful apps it can use are things like the email app, so you can ask it to compose emails for you. Some of those are not yet supported in Quick, but as I said, you're free to wrap them and expose them as you want. Quick is quite nice, as we saw, that basically the C++ bit is ready built, so you don't actually need Visual Studio at all. One thing to note is that it should be fairly easy for us to extend the desktop simulator support, the Microsoft simulator, to run quick builds, but at the moment the simulator option is only available from inside Visual Studio, so from the hub you can't select it as either a deployment or a testing option. Stay tuned, hopefully we'll have an update out soon that'll let you use the simulator for quick as well. And that, I think, is it for me today. Any questions about anything at all, feel free to fire away. You can also contact us at hello@marmalademail.com. Any questions at all about Quick APIs, C++ APIs, features that you'd like to see, especially related to the Windows Phone 8 support, then let us know. And thank you very much. Okay, so we've got a few questions that I'm having a look through at the moment. The session is being recorded. I'm not sure offhand where the URL will be available, but we'll certainly post it round to attendees and put it up on the website. So stay tuned, and I'll make sure that gets to you, and I'll chase up with the tech guys who are organising this. There is a question about how much free memory does it need to run smoothly. So I'm not sure if this means on the desktop or on the device. the devices are now pretty, they've got a lot more RAM than the original Windows Phone devices did. Something like a quick app is very, very unlikely you'll ever push it to really churn through the RAM available on one of those phones. But it's no different to any regular phone app. So there's no real overheads with Marmalade in the way it works compared to just, you need as much memory as the images that you load into the game and the sound you load into the game, basically. On the desktop, if you go to Marmalade Docs at docs.madewithmarmalade.com and go to right at the top in Getting Started, there's a What Do We Support page, and it'll give you all the information on what you need for resources and desktop requirements and stuff to get it running. In fact, I can probably pull that open right now and just show you. So this is the new dock system. I think it's open it, so just to show you the new Windows Phone APIs. We've got overviews of how to use them. But up at the top, there's a Getting Started section, and you can see in quite a bit of detail platform support and requirements, what you need to deploy to different things, which APIs are available on different platforms, and so on. So first thing to do, I would take a look at that for anything to do with desktop requirements. There's a question about how can you tell me if I know if my app is 3-star or not. So it's basically it's not a fixed quality bar. It's just like think about if your app was released on the store, is it likely to get a 3-star rating from users? And it's at Microsoft's discretion, basically, if they approve apps based on quality. But they want apps. It's not like they're only going to, approve the very, very top tier of apps they get submitted. It's just it means they have a quality gate where things that they think are, sort of cheap fake apps that have been put together to try and get through some promotion, they can reject them. But if you have, a good-looking, interesting, fun-to-play app, then it should get approved. There's a question about eligibility based on where you are. There aren't any location barriers to where people can sign up from. I will have to check on in terms of sending devices out if there are any restrictions. So I'm just going to chase up on that now. I'll let you know very shortly. Okay, so there are restrictions location-wise, and they're listed in the terms and conditions from the offer up on the website. So somewhere in here there should be a T's and C's section. I'll have to apologise because I've got all of the questions open here. It's pretty hard to actually see what's going on. There you go. Oh, and yes, that's a good point. This is also a good place to get some specifics about qualifying apps. So there's a little list here of specific kinds of apps that don't qualify, but they're not necessarily things you're going to be building. So the first two are basically things that are sort of beyond the reach of things you would generally use Marmalade to build anyway. So they're not accepting launcher shortcuts or browsers. And then also applications that provide a simple single function. So this is basically the barrier against fart apps and that kind of thing. I'm just trying to find the location part. I'm going to have to chase up on that location question and get back to you. An interesting question about, for a beginner with basic programming knowledge, would you recommend C++ or Quick modes for Marmalade? Is Lua easy to learn and make? So it depends on what you want to do, really. The big advantage to using C++ is basically that you have more power, you can do more interesting things, and there's more APIs immediately available. But you have to do quite a lot of work to set up a basic C++ app. So you need to get your engine code running, to pull in different modules to get things going. The nice thing with Quick is it gives you a very clean, straight out of the box scene graph API and small easy bits of code to use to do stuff. Those kind of APIs, modules are all available in the C++ Marmalade SDK as well. An interesting thing you could do is go and have a look at the SDK ships with a tutorial game called Harvest Hijinks that you probably saw a little bit earlier. And there's actually a C++ and a Lua version of exactly the same game. So if you wanted, you could take a look at the implementation of those to see sort of what the difference is in terms of how much code it is or how fast it runs or whatever. But that's a nice kind of example to take a look at. Personally, if I was going to build a fun 2D app in a short amount of time, so I only had, say, like a month to do it in, I would go with Quick. Lua is an interesting language because it's very simple, so you can start using it very, very quickly. You just need to get your head around sort of the basics of how it works. If you're used to C++, because it is higher level and it does a lot of stuff for you, but also it doesn't have things like, it doesn't have objects out of the box. It doesn't have inheritance out of the box. You have to build those things yourself, but it's very, very easy to use. It is very fast for a scripting language, and if you've got fun ideas and you just want to throw them together and build stuff, then I would totally recommend going for Quick to get started. I use C++ myself for like big projects and or work stuff basically, and Quick is the thing I use where it's like I have a day off at the weekend and I fancy making something, so I just start coding. It's a very easy API and set of tools to just start throwing ideas together. Good luck. I was going to say there were some quite good blog posts with sort of info on doing various things in Quick up on the website. And since our Marmalade 7 website relaunch, those are not currently up at the moment, but I'll try and see if I can get them put up somewhere next week so that they'll be available. So they've got lots of useful information for how to do object-oriented stuff and how to use various different bits of the API. So I might actually get them pushed up to the regular quick docs on the website because they're quite useful. I think that's us just about out of time for this webcast. There will be recording available, and I'll make sure that a link goes up for that. It's nice and easy to find. I see it's just been pointed out to me that for the Windows Phone question about locations and were you eligible to sign up, when you sign up for the Windows Phone Store account itself, which you'll need to do in order to upload your beta app, there are terms and conditions on there which you should read through, which will have very detailed information on what location restrictions there are and personal restrictions there are on who can submit apps and from where. So you'll have to qualify for those in order to be able to upload your app at all to the website. There's a question about, can I use Nokia imaging SDK in Marmalade apps? So we don't have support for that out of the box at the moment, but with Marmalade you can basically write extensions to different platforms. So for example, if there's an API that's not supported on some platform, you can basically write some code in the original language and API and then expose it to your Marmalade C++ app as an extension. So for example, on iPhone you would write some Objective-C code, on Windows Phone 8 you could write some C# code using stuff from Windows Phone SDK. So in theory you should be able to use that to expose things like Nokia SDKs that are available. We've not put a lot of information up on doing that for Windows Phone 8 yet, but the basics are up on the website. And if you have any questions, then feel free to go and post those in our community forums. So on the website, in the developer section, there is a link to our answer hub for the community, where basically anyone can post questions and reply to them. And we do have Marmalade engineers and support engineers who drop by there every so often to try and help people out. So hopefully we'll be able to answer your question there. And in terms of those extensions, how they tend to work is things that we think people definitely need or that are sort of core features, we'll write extensions ourselves, or we'll take people's extensions and we'll bundle them with the SDK. So that things like, there's the Windows advertising API you could see in there. That's actually an extension that we just ship with the SDK. We ship some things like, for example, Facebook and Twitter things, because they're just useful things that most people want to use. Things that aren't shipped will tend to either be provided by the company themselves. So we have partnerships with lots of third parties, and they'll provide a Marmalade plugin on their website. Or you can go to github.com and go to the account called Marmalade, and see lots of user-created extensions or ones that we're just managing as open source online. If there's any specific Windows Phone features like that that you're interested in and don't want to write yourself, then I would recommend going on to the community forums and just posting requests. Okay, I've just had a very kind of bold message saying that it's just devices that might have restrictions for the Windows Phone Store in terms of whether you're eligible. Anyone can submit. So if I put anyone off there, please still sign up. You can definitely submit from all territories. Location restrictions will just be based on whether you qualify for free devices. I think that is pretty much all we've got time for today. I'm going to make sure that these slides and the recording of the video go up online. And also I will get those extra quick blogs and guides back up on the new Marmalade 7 website. So thanks everybody for your time. Good luck and happy coding. And if there's any questions that I've missed at the end here or that pop up while the chat's still running, I'll make sure we have a look through those and get answers back to you. So thank you very much.